Hi, and welcome to Reed's Audio Reading. I'm Reed, and I hope you enjoy my channel. Today I'll be reading the accessory Guide to Hell, specifically Chapter 4. This accessory was written by Chris Pramas. Chapter 4 The Nine Layers. Hell looks like an inverted mountain, an apt metaphor, as more than one commentator has mentioned. The plane consists of 9 layers: Avernus, Dis, Menoris, Pathegthos, Stygia, Malbolge, Maldomini, Cania, and Nessus. The broadest part of the plane is the first layer of Avernus. The hail comes to the tip on the ninth layer of Nessus. The farther down a traveler goes, the better his view of the layers above. The 9 layers fit together like the pieces of a puzzle. Each subsequent descent allows a traveler to see more of how the puzzle comes together. The river Styx. The polluted waters of the river Styx flow throughout the lower plains, a dark counterpart to the river Oceanus, whose sweet waters flow across the upper plains. The river Styx runs with water that is putrid, black, and oily. Although rank, this water still tempts those suffering from thirst. Anyone who drinks or even touches the water of the Styx, however, must save versus spell or suffer total amnesia of his or her past life, including class, alignment, and spell. Those who do save only lose their last day's worth of memories. Although it usually only touches the topmost layers of each plane it visits, the river enters hell in 3 places: Avernus, the first layer; Stygia, the fifth layer; and Nessus, the ninth. Like on the rest of the river Styx, the branches in Bator are piled by Marinotholoths, the strange skeletal boatmen who will carry anyone for the right price. However, few know that Styx enters Nessus, and the resident pit fiends slaughter anyone who approach the lowest level without authorization. The layer of Stygia is unique among the lower planes because the river Styx runs through it both ways. This has led some scholars to posit the Stygia is in fact the source of the great river. While no one knows if this is true, it is undeniable that the waters of the river in Stygia are even more potent than they are elsewhere. Any contact with the water forces a save versus spell at -4. Those who fail forget everything they've ever learned and must make a second saving throw versus paralyzation or lose their motor and speech skills. If this first saving throw is made, a year's worth of memories is still lost. The easiest way to get to hell is to die with the alignment of lawful evil. The spirits of the dead are known as petitioners, and each one reforms on the plane that corresponds to its alignment. Long ago, the Bazetsu discovered that lawful evil petitioners could be made into lemurs and nuparibos, the lowest members of their race. It is for this reason that diabolic agents ply the prime material plane, tempting mortals into evil. Most PCs have no interest in dying, going to hell, and spending several millennia as a lemur, though those players up for a real role-playing challenge are encouraged to go for it. Player characters are far more likely to see hell as a place of adventure and infinitely big dungeon with the most powerful monsters around. These characters will need to find a way into hell if they want the adventure they crave. Luckily for them, they have several avenues to choose from. The easiest way to get around the planes is through the use of gates. These are magical doors that lead from one plane to another, though some are only one way. Each gate requires a key to activate it. Keys are sometimes specific items, a lotus from the Serenity Lake, for example, and sometimes a general class of items, any flower, for instance. Gates are the most common way to travel between the planes, and planar hubs such as Sigil and the City of Glass are renowned for their multiplicity of gates. The problem with using gates to get into hell is that a perpetual state of war exists between the Bazetsu and the Tanari. That being the case, the gates in hell tend to be very well guarded. The best route in this via a gate in the town of Ribcage in the Outlands. Those who wish to travel onward must gain entrance to the citadel of Lord Paras, the ruler of Ribcage. Theoretically, travelers must have an official invitation from one of the lords of the Nine to pass through the cursed gate. Luckily, Paracas is a practical devil, and he can be bribed into providing an invitation. Those who rely on its supposed protections are in for a rude surprise, however. Another option is the city of Sigil. However, the gates from Sigil to Bator are strange in that their endpoints constantly shift. Many have tried to establish a pattern of the gates' movement, but none have been able to do so. This means that those who travel to Hell have to find a different way out. Higher level characters are likely to have access to spells and magical items that make planar travel easier. The 5th level cleric spell plane shift is the best option. The magical item, Amulet of the Planes, can also be useful, assuming that the plane it's good for is Bator. Getting out. Getting out is an altogether trickier proposition. Gates are heavily guarded by diabolical forces, and who can always gate in assistance when needed. Gates that change location are difficult to locate. It's possible to spend years plundering around the landscape of Hell without stumbling across a portal out. Then there's the River Styx. It's more reliable but only travels through the lower plane. You can get out of Hell, but is Archon or the Abyss any better? Most travelers discover that a good way to escape is to make a deal with the local. The righteous, of course, have problems with dealing with devils and usually refuse to do so. They also tend to stay in hell longer than those with a more realistic outlook. If they get out at all, that is. As always, the traveler who comes prepared enjoys his trip the most. Groups with access to appropriate spells and magical items can leave when they choose, under their own terms. The only tricks are keeping the spellcasters alive and preventing the magical items from being stolen or destroyed. The 9 Layers. The following pages contain information on each of the Hell's 9 layers. These descriptions are generally physical, leaving politics and personalities for the next chapter. Each layer is detailed as follows. Lord. The lords of the 9 rule the 9 layers of Hell. A layer's ruler is listed here with detailed information available in the next chapter. Resident devils. This entry lists the most common types of devils encountered. This is not to say that other types of Bazetsu are never found here, only that they are more rare. Other denizens. A surprising number of non-devils live in Hell, including members of all the major humanoid races. Particularly, common races are listed here. The term planar is used in reference to members of typical races that make their home on the plains, including humans, elves, dwarves, gnomes, and halflings. Important locations. A quick list of the layer's most significant places. Realms. Most layers are home to at least one deity. These powers have their own realms in which they call the shots, in which are not part of the hell proper. The power's name is given in parentheses following the name of its realm. Description. Following the quick reference information of the previous entries is a detailed description of the lair. Rules. Most areas have some special rules that apply to travelers. Location descriptions. Each of the important locations identified earlier has a more detailed write-up at the end of the entry. Layer 1. Avernus. Lord. Bell. Resident Devils. Abishai, Lemurs, Nuperibos, and Sprinagons. Other denizens. Goblins, Kobolds, Dragons, and Imps. Important locations. The Bronze Citadel, Darkspine, the Maggot Pit, Tiamat's Lair. Realms. Drukhari, Tiamat's Lair, and the Peaceable Lands. Avernus, the first lair of Hell, is the lair most frequently visited. Here, the mighty armies of the Bazetsu muster and train for the Blood War. Because of the focus of this lair is the waging of war, Avernus is a dangerous place to visit. Many a traveler has plane shifted into the midst of a Bazetsu army and been torn to shreds in moments. First-time visitors are sure to be impressed. Avernus certainly looks like hell, with neither stars nor sun shining overhead. Instead, the entire lair is suffused with a blood-red light that never wavers or dims. Blood, in fact, is the leitmotif of Avernus. Consider that the lake of blood spills from the Stigmaris Mountains into the River of Blood, and thence through a series of streams and gulches into the river of Styx. There are those who say that every scum covered river, from trickle to torrent, is naught but the blood of Avernus victims. In any other place, such poetic exaggeration would be cause for a smile. Here, it is grim reality. Avernus is an endless wasteland of blasted rock strewn fields, broken up with jagged mountains and treacherous foothills. The obsidian and quartz that protrudes from the earth could be beautiful in another place, but here only serve to cut and scrape the feet and legs of travelers. Even those sure of foot in such terrain must fear the fireballs that crisscross Avernus seemingly at random. Said to be an embodiment of the rage of Avernus's former lord, imprisoned by the pit fiend Bel long ago, these fireballs streak through the sky before, exploding spectacularly on the blasted rock below. Rules: anyone who moves on the surface of Avernus at a pace faster than a brisk walk must make a dexterity check after every round of movement in this fashion. Those who fail take 1d3 points of damage from a fall among the jagged rocks. The fireballs fly through the air at random. The DM should check once per hour for any group of PCs in Avernus. The group has a 5% chance to be hit by a 5d6 fireball. Randomly determine which PC the attack is centered on. All PCs hit are entitled to saving throws for half damage. These fireballs cannot be dispelled or controlled, but are otherwise identical with the effects of a third level wizard spell. The Bronze Citadel. This mighty fortress is Bel's center of power. Unlike the rest of the lords, Bel must give much of his attention to the blood war. Since Avernus would be the beachhead of any Tanari invasion, Bel is constantly adding to the defenses of the Bronze Citadel. Work gangs of lowly Bazetsu and wretched slave continually build new walls and other fortifications. This has been going on for so long that the citadel covers hundreds of square miles of territory and features 12 concentric rings of walls, each bristling with war machines. In the center of these massive fortifications lies the original bronze citadel. It is here that Bel plans his military campaigns and holds court. Darkspine. This place used to be one of the so-called gate towns of the Outlands. However, the Bezetsu of Avernus were able to pull the town into hell, making Ribcage the new gate town to Bator. This process has been undertaken many times, resulting in a string of ruined former gate towns that stretches from Darkspine all the way to River Styx. Most of the original inhabitants of Darkspine have fled or been slain. Little remain of the town. A few scavengers hang on among the ruins, and Bezitsu's guard keep out the unwelcome. The Maggot Pit. Blocking access to Tiamat's lair is a huge crater easily 1,000 feet across filled with ooze and writhing maggots. It is from this primordial soup that new lemurs and nuperibos are born. The maggot pit is guarded by a red Abishai named Araka, who can gate in more devils in case of emergency. Araka has been known to accept bribes in exchange for a safe flight over the maggot pit. Tiamat's Lair. The maggot pit abuts a sheer rock wall that stretches across the plain and rises as far as the eye can see. A single cave mouth pierces the wall. This is the entrance to Tiamat's lair. Here, the Lady of Dragonkind guards the only gateway to the second lair of hell. She is attended by her 5 consorts, the most powerful male great worms of each chromatic color: red, black, green, blue, and white. Those who make it to Tiamat's lair have but 3 options: bargain, flee, or die. Layer 2. Dis. Lord. Dispater. Resident devils. Abishai, lemurs, nuperibos, and spinagons. Other denizens. Shades, imps, planars. Important locations: the Iron Tower, the Garden of Delights, Mentiri. Realms. Retreat of the Fallen, Duraga. Dis is the name of both the lair and the great city at its heart. Scholars speculate as to whether there is really a difference between the two, since the city seems infinite to those inside it. From the outside, it seems simple enough. The city sits inside a great ring of mountains. However, those who cannot follow the roads made of skulls never get any closer to the city. Those who do not mind treading on the skulls of the damned twist and turn among great spurs of blackened iron that thrust from the earth. These spurs get thicker, closer to the city, and at a certain point, they simply turn into enormous walls. Due to the strange spatial laws in effect, actually, identifying this point is difficult. Some travelers walk deep inside the city before realizing they have arrived. The city is, of course, full of devils. The focus here is far less military than on Avernus, and Dispater concentrates on making his city greater. Whereas Bel builds up the bronze citadel to make it more defensible, no one understands what logic guides Dispater's decisions. One week, work crews lay down metal plates, and the next they tear the plates up and lay down cobblestones. The only suturing is that the petitioners that make up the work gangs suffer in horrid conditions, and that may well be the only point. Interestingly enough, the city of Dis boasts neighborhoods friendly to humans and other planers races. These areas, founded by enterprising merchants, often mimic famous sections of cities on the prime material plane. Although the food is bad and the heat is terrible, this is as close to catering to the tourist communities as it gets in hell. The folks who choose to live in this are not the sanest members of their race. Many become so desperate that only the hope of one big score keeps them from ending their lives. Rules. The blackened iron walls of Dis smoke with incredible heat. Even a quick brush is enough to inflict an agonizing burn to unprotected skin. Many of the locals who aren't devils wear padded clothing and thick leather boots. Unprotected individuals take 1d6 damage from each contact, and the air is constantly rent with the cries of sizzling petitioners. The Iron Tower. The Spader controls Dis from the Iron Tower, an enormous structure that dominates the rest of the city. The Iron Tower has even stranger properties than the city. Its form is constantly changing. One minute it's a squat building of ponderous bulk, the next, it's slender tower shooting towards Avernus. In addition, the tower is visible from every part of the city, and it always seems to be just beyond the next row of buildings. Bazitsu can simply teleport to the tower, but others can trek for days and never reach their destination. If there is a secret to gaining entry, few mortals know it. The Garden of Delights. Behind tall walls of sandstone lies the Garden of Delights. It seems like an oasis of pleasure amid the oppressive heat of Dis. Beautiful women stand at the gates, ready to collect an exorbitant entry fee from would be patrons. Inside, pleasures of the flesh are readily available, as are refreshing beverages and sumptuous meals. However, the garden is nothing but the illusion of a bound efreet putting in its 1001 days of service to a diabolic master. While all of the customers' needs seem to be met, in fact, they are eating and drinking nothing at all. Due to the nature of this fact only becomes apparent when the garden is left behind. Many a patron has starved to death amid the illusion of grand feasts and rivers of wine. Mentiri. Mentiri is a prison deep inside the heart of Dis. Mortals caught trying to sneak into hell, as well as those captured in the blood war, are brought here. The inmates are a strange mix of devoted crusaders, greedy thieves, mercenary sellswords, and gullible adventurers. The only thing they have in common is that they broke the laws of hell in one way or another. Mentiri has a reputation as a place of horror and torture. The truth is far more insidious. Mentiri does not just want to make its prisoners pay, it wants to make them pay for all time. To achieve this, the prison reforms the inmates by manipulating them into changing their alignment to lawful evil. This is done by various methods. the most popular of which uses polymorph devils to sow discord among the prisoners and tempt them into evil. Once properly reformed, the prisoners are truly damned. When they die, they will remain in hell and spend millennia as mindless lemurs and nuperivos. Only then will their debt to hellish society be paid. Layer 3, Minorus. Lord, Mammon. Resident devils, Hamatula, lemurs, nuperibos, and sprinagons. Other denizens, planars. Important locations, Jangling Hitter, Realms, Ayaya. Under the leaden skies of Minoros lies an endless mire with the stench of a cesspool. Rain pours down with the sound of 1,000 drums, accompanied by icy sleet that freezes travelers and leaves behind an oily residue. Those who want to avoid the skin flaying fury of a jagged hail can only find relief in the city of Minoros itself. The city is known as Minorois the Sinking, and for the good reason. Despite its enormous size and longevity, the city loses a little ground to the frigid mud every year. This process has been going on for millennia, and the Bezetsu seem unable to stop it. Work parties scour the lair for usable stone, which is used to shore up as much of the city as possible. To mortals, this problem seems slight, but to immortal devils, it is acute. In only a few more millennia, the city could be enveloped. Some say that the original city sank long ago, and the new buildings are simply built on top of the ruins of the old. So far, no one has been willing to swim deep enough into the fetid muck to see what really lies below. Despite its impossibly huge size, Minoris the Sinking does not take up the entirety of the layer. Some volcanic mountains are nearby, from which work parties scavenge stone for the city. There are also several communities made up of runaway slaves. While many of the members of these groups have taken to calling their dwellings a city, the truth is that most of them live in wretched hovels. The Hamatula are very active here, hunting down escaped slaves and petitioners trying to avoid fighting in the blood war. Rules: flying is the fastest way to travel, though the storms are still quite dangerous. Those forced to slog their way through the muck travel at only half of their normal rate, and must be careful to avoid sinkholes and other hidden dangers. When storms rage, movement is reduced to 1/4 of normal, and anyone unfortunate enough to be outside during a hailstorm takes 1d4 points of damage per turn. An average storm lasts for 2d12 turns. Jangling Hitter, also known as the City of Chains. Jangling Hitter solves the problem of Minoros in an interesting way. In order to avoid sinking into the mud, the entire city is hanging by and constructed by chains. Huge links of slime covered chain stretch high into the sky and disappear into the clouds. No one knows what the chains are anchored to or how the city came to exist. Unfortunately, chains do not provide the best cover from the elements, and they can only protect visitors and inhabitants partially. Nonetheless, the city's denizens like to carry on as if Jangling Hitter were a normal city. It's divided into a fiend quarter, a merchant's quarter, and a visitor's quarter. The merchant's quarter is the safest part of the city for visitors, since merchants bring things of value to the city. The visitors' quarter is known by the locals as the meat quarter and is best avoided. Layer 4, Phlegethos. Lord, Lady Firana, and Archduke Belial. Resident devils, Hamatulas, Cornigons, and Spinagons. Other denizens, hellhounds and imps. Important locations, the Pit of Flame. Realms, the Jealous Heart. When common people think of hell, they're really thinking of Phlegethos. This is the lair with the lakes of fire, the rivers of molten lava, and the heat antithetical to most forms of life. Phlegethos exists to burn, and the flame is nearly sentient. Those who come out to Phlegethos uninvited find that the fire seeks them out, bending quite unnaturally and scorching without mercy. The only known city on Phlegethos is Abrimoch, built inside an active volcano and surrounded by a lake of lava. Abrimoch is a heinous mismatch of magma, obsidian, and crystal. The city is ruled by a pit fiend named Gazra from a castle of crystal statues. He commands 5,000 Hamatula and is responsible for the security of the first four layers of hell. The Hamatula are particularly active on the third and fourth layers, nabbing intruders and bringing them back to Abrimoch and imprisoning them under the city. No mortal has ever escaped from the dungeons of the city, and few last long in any case. Gezra's Hamatula also hunt for deserters from the Bazetsu armies and watch for signs for corruption among its officer corps. Due to the hostile conditions and frequent patrols, few strangers come to Phlegethos. Most of those who do are burned to death or killed by zealous guardsmen. Unlike the devils of the upper levels, the Hamatula are not keen to bribery. They do not negotiate, nor do they show pity. Rules. The environment of Pthegos is so deadly that those who come here without magical protection from fire take 1d6 plus 4 points of damage per round until they succumb. No amount of hit points can save a character from endless fire and air temperature hot enough to char meat and bubbling pools of magma. The Pit Aflame. The pit is a place of punishment and purification for devils. Sitting at the center of Pathegos, the pit is a huge lake of boiling filth that projects columns of searing white flame upwards more than 100 feet. This is not normal fire, which Bazetsu are immune to, but some kind of energy drawn from the nature of hell itself. Ocelots can instantly deposit any devil except a pit fiend into the pit for breaking Batoran law. However, many devils voluntarily enter the flames, for they are said to give strength to those who can endure their torments. 9 companies of Cornigons guard the pit of flame, making sure that no one leaves until their time is up. Layer 5, Stygia, Lord, Prince Levistus. Resident devils, Abishai, Aminzu, Arinius, and Spinagons. Other denizens, Planars. Important locations, Tantalin, the City of Ice, the Tome of Levistus. Realms, Ankuat, Sharushk, and the Steadfast Chill. Stygia is a frozen sea churning with ice flows and gargantuan icebergs. The river Styx flows through the midst of Stygia and gives the lair its name. It's strange to think of a river running through an ocean, but that's exactly what happens here. The black water of Stygia winds its way across the frozen white landscape of Stygia like a malevolent serpent. The Styx flows fast enough to avoid freezing, so communities tend to cluster near its banks. While its water is dangerous to drink, the Styx does provide easy transportation about Stygia. Life above the frozen sea is contained on ice floes that are large enough to support cities and castles. Nearly all of these bergs are controlled by the Aminzu, who are charged with the defense of Stygia. While it's a great boon, the river Styx also provides a handy avenue of attack, and it's the job of the Aminzu job to ensure that enemies don't use the river to mount an invasion. Several cities populated by planers lying along the river and survive by trading. The frozen ocean itself is largely a mystery. It is assumed that some beings live beneath its surface, but no one wants to speculate in details. It is a known fact that the realm of Sekula, the bestial deity of the Shahugin, lies beneath the ice. This in itself is a reason enough to stay away. Rumors of ancient tentacled gods trapped beneath the ice are common, but apocryphal, at least as far as anyone can tell. Rules. The skies of Stygia are full of lightning. The constant flashes illuminate the lair, but make flying nearly impossible. Any flyer with the maneuverability class poorer than B has a 50% chance of being struck by lightning each turn it's in the sky. Those hit take 5d6 damage, half if a save versus spell is made. Tantalin, the City of Ice. Tantalin is the greatest city of Stygia. The city is run as some sort of demented social experiment by the nameless pit fiend, whose only law is that the strong should survive. Where she appears, none survive. Luckily, Prince Levistus seems to keep her busy, so her outbursts are the exception rather than the rule. Really, the city has no government. It is run by gangs of devils and planers, each of which has staked out a section of the town. By unspoken agreement, the gangs spare those crucial to the prosperity of the city, such as merchants and work crews. Other than that, anything goes, and gang fights occur with amazing regularity. Visitors who insist on choosing sides had best choose wisely. The Tomb of Levistus. The ruler of Stygia, Prince Levistus, lies trapped inside a great iceberg known as the Tomb of Levistus. Although he is frozen in the ice, Levistus is fully aware and controls his lair directly. The tomb is said to be near Tentlin, but no one knows its location for sure. Rumor has it that those who dig Levistus out of the ice will have complete control over the prince. Layer 6, Malbolge. Lord, Malagard, the Hag Countess. Resident devils, Barbazu, Gelugans, and Sprinigans. Other denizens, unknown. Important locations, the Copper Fortress. Realms, none. Also known as the Crushing Lands, Malbolge is perhaps the most treacherous layer of hell. Basically, an infinite slope, Malbolge has no horizontal planes at all, which makes building quite difficult. Boulders continually careen downslope, although no one knows where they come from. These jagged rocks shift and roll, sometimes settling briefly, but always moving on. Floating amid the smaller boulders are huge islands of stone. These larger rocks tend to be more stable, but even they are not anchored in the bedrock. Those few cities built on top of such boulders have all been destroyed when their bases rolled over during a particularly violent avalanche. Although the rolling boulders and jagged rocks are quite perilous, the greatest danger on Malbolge is falling. Due to the treacherous slopes and uncertain footing, it's possible to fall anywhere from 10 feet to 10,000 feet before smashing into stone. Inhospitable in the extreme, Malbolge is unpopular even among the Bezetsu. They at least have the advantage of teleport magic. Many travelers have no such luxury. Occasionally, the boulders stand still long enough to form dark tunnels through the piles. It is said that a stable layer of bedrock lies beneath the shifting maelstrom, and that entrances to underground strongholds can be found if the searcher is lucky. The danger of exploring tunnels through the boulders is that they may shift again at any time. While shelter from other boulders is certainly desirable, anyone inside the tunnels can be crushed at any moment. Rules. Traveling in this landscape is very difficult indeed, and movement is reduced to one quarter of normal. A group led by someone with the mountaineering proficiency can increase its rate to half or normal if a successful check is made. Each turn on Malbolge, there is a 20% chance of a boulder crashing through where the PCs are located. Characters must save versus breath weapon or take 8d6 damage, save for half. Each hour, the DM should check to see if a major avalanche occurs. The base chance for this is a 15% chance, plus 5% for each boulder that rolled through the area in the past 10 turns. Those caught in an avalanche must save versus breath weapon or take 12d6 plus 12 damage, save for half. The Copper Fortresses. The only known structures in Malbolge are the copper fortresses of Malagard, the Hag Countess. These small fortresses are built in the more stable areas, usually behind one of the large islands of stone. Even so, boulders constantly careen off their copper plated walls, creating a furious racket. Malagard is said to travel in disguise from fortress to fortress, testing her subjects. Those who treat her badly are killed instantly, and their fortresses are razed. Layer 7, Maladomini. Lord, Archduke Balzebul, aka Trail the Fallen. Resident devils Barbazu, Cornogons, Erinyes, Lemurs, and Spinagons. Other denizens none. Important locations Granpoli, City of Diplomacy, Melagard. Realms none. The watchword in Maladomini is decay, in both its physical and moral connotations. If ever Maladomini was beautiful, that time was long, long ago. Now, it is a scarred landscape of ruined cities, clogged canals, and lifeless tree stumps. The endless strip lines that dot Maladomini look like gaping wounds. Archduke Balzabul, a former archcon from Mount Celestia, also known as Triel the Fallen, rules over this nightmare landscape that is a fitting testimony of his own degeneracy. It is his crazed desire for perfection he can never achieve that drives the endless labor of his subjects. Baalzebul has longed for a fitting city for his greatness of millennia. His subjects have built him city after city, but they are never good enough. Once a city is complete, Baalzebul judges it unworthy and then begins construction anew. Previous cities are often plundered for raw materials, which only hastens their ruination. The old cities have become the homes of runaways, deserters, and creatures from other planes. Balzabul occasionally sends units of his army through the cities to roust out the malcontents, which merely causes them to flee to a different city. Thanks to Beelzebul, they have many to choose from. The bravest of the malcontents flee to the tunnels beneath the cities, rather than escaping to a new city. Some say the original denizens of Bezetsu still live under the streets of the old cities. All that's known for sure is that something is living down there, and it isn't friendly. Rules. No particular rules govern Maldemoni. The devils, under the control of Trael, are the real hazard. Granpoli, City of Diplomacy. Grimpley at first appears to be the most civilized city in hell. Weapons cannot be carried inside its walls, nor can offensive spells be cast. The residents seem friendly and open, and many races intermingle and carry on trade. However, this air of civility is just a facade. Beneath the surface is a brutal world of politics, treachery, and betrayal, all presided over the cunning Arrhenius named Misdom. Those who violate her laws are killed without question or appeal. She sits at the center of a vast web of intrigue, and Grenopoly functions as a training ground for devils in the fine art of the deal. At a place known as the political school, enterprising devils can learn about treachery and deception. Arrhenius are found in the school in large numbers, since they need their wills to seduce mortals on the prime material plane. Melagard. This is the city of Dujor of Triel the Fallen. Everyone agrees that it is the greatest city he has ever constructed, nor does anyone doubt that it will shortly be abandoned by the crazied Archduke. While he is in residence, work continues. In fact, the workers have been going slow in the final stages, sabotaging much of their own work so they won't have to start again soon. Triel hasn't seemed to notice it, but it's only a matter of time before he demands completion of the project. Layer 8 Cania Lord Mephistopheles, aka Baron Molecorth. Resident devils Gelgons and Crotricons. Other denizens none. Important locations the Citadel of Mystifar, Kintry. Realms none. Cania is a frozen wasteland, colder by far than frigid Stygia. Cyclopean mountains endlessly grind against colossal glaciers. Avalanches large enough to bury cities routinely reshape the landscape, overwhelming unprepared travelers in mere seconds. Cania is so inhospitable that even devils from the upper layers rarely come here. They leave it in the care of Mephistopheles, who broods in the citadel of Mystifar and watches for agents of Prince Levistus. The primary residents of Cania are Gelugons, who are second in power and authority only to pit fiends. What the Gelugons actually do down on the eighth layer is an open question, but weaker Bezetsu know better than to ask a Gelugon directly. The place of the Gelogons as a second ranking type of devils is assured, but their role remains somewhat mysterious. The one fact all devils know that the Gelogons guard the only gate to Nessus, the ninth layer of hell. To even reach the guards requires a descent into a glacial pit miles deep. Assuming it were even possible to beat so many Gelogons on their home territory. It's then a swim of 1001 farathoms through frozen slush to reach the portal to Nessus. In other words, no one gets to Nessus without the express permission of Asmodeus, the Dark Lord of Nessus. Rules. No words can accurately describe how cold Cania really is. The mercilessly chill snuffs the life out of unprotected creatures in a matter of minutes. Like Phlegethos, Cania is an environment so harsh that magical protection is required to survive it. Those who arrive in Cania without warm clothing freeze to death in 1d4 minutes. Travelers lucky enough to have appropriate cold weather clothing can look forward to 1d20 hours before they expire. The glaciers of Cania are said to be full of frozen corpses, some dating back thousands of years. The citadel of Mistafar. The number of bad poets have quipped that Cania is as cold as the heart of its lord Mistapheles. The fact that his citadel is warm and inviting apparently escapes them. Mistafar, despite the fact it is carved from the ice of the glacier Nargus, is one of the few hot spots in Cania. Huge clouds of steam erupts when the mighty doors are opened to admit visitors, a rare occasion since most devils simply teleport in. The inside is abuzz with activity. The seemingly endless levels of the Citadel house armies of devils loyal to Mephistopheles. Troops of defenders are ready to teleport anywhere on Cania at moment's notice. The Citadel, proper houses of Mephistopheles and his court, all of whom engage in the politics of power. Kintir. Many secrets lie under the ice of Cania, and first among them is the city of Kintir. No one knows where the city came from or how it came to be buried under thousands of tons of ice, but its existence has been confirmed. A party of explorers bored into the ice deep enough so that the city could clearly be seen. Its style of architecture was strange, and no inhabitants were visible. No one can yet be able to dig down deep enough to actually investigate the ruins, but several enterprising individuals are trying to organize expeditions. Some say that where there is one, there are bound to be others, and they want to search for other buried cities. Others say that if Mephistopheles is powerful enough to imprison cities in ice, then messing with his handiwork is a bad idea. Layer 9. Nessus. Lord. Asmodeus, Dark Lord of Nessus. Resident devils. Cornigons and pit fiends. Other denizens. None. Important locations. Malshim. Realms. None. Very little is known about Nessus, and for good reason. The ninth layer is the bottom of the pit and the end point of Asmodeus' fall. While the other layers of his domain, Nessus is his keep. This is the center of his power, a vast storehouse of secrets and lies. The bottom of the pit is a blasted land crisscrossed with trenches and rifts. These crevices range in depths from a few hundred feet to thousands of miles. It's possible to fall for hours before hitting the bottom. The deepest rift by far is known as the Serpent's Coil. Due to the overwhelming number of trenches in Nessus, the Serpent's Coil is not immediately obvious. However, closer inspection reveals a rift that spirals in on itself over the course of hundreds of miles. About 1 mile wide, the Serpent's Coil descends roughly 5 miles to the very bottom of the pit. Unbeknownst to the Bazetsu inhabitants of Nessus, the Serpent's Coil was formed by the plummeting body of Asmodeus at the end of his fall. His titanic form still rests at the bottom of the rift. In other words, it's a mercy to those who fall into the rift that the descent kills them. The wounds of Asmodeus have yet to heal. He continues to bleed slowly, his seeping vitae pooling among the rocks of the Serpent's Coil. Out of these pools, new devils are born every day. These devils, consisting of cornigons and pit fiends, are perfect specimens of their race. They have maximum hit points and are blindly loyal to Asmodeus. After so many years languishing in Nessus, Asmodeus has built up an army of incredible size. Should he break free from Bator, a horde of pit fiends and Cornigons would follow in his wake. Nessus is scored by patrols of pit fiends and Cornigons. They pay particular attention to the offshoot of the river Styx that dribbles into the pit. Few know that the Styx penetrates so deeply into Nessus, and the pit fiends make sure that those who blunder onto the ninth layer never return. Anyone caught without authorization on Nethys is slain without question. The armies of Nessus are Asmodeus's personal troops. They are not involved in the blood war or the struggles of the other lords. They are so tightly controlled by Asmodeus that they can only teleport out of Nessus with his permission, though they teleport around Nessus freely. Similarly, devils from the upper layers, including the Lords and the Dark Eight, can only teleport in when invited by the Lord of Lies. Unauthorized teleport travel in either direction simply does not work. Rules. No special rules are in effect in Nessus. Just being here without the permission of its ruler is automatically fatal. Malshim. Asmodeus' army is headquartered at the citadel of Malshim. This structure is the largest citadel in the Outer Plains, stretching hundreds of miles in every direction. Sitting at the bottom of the Dreet Drench, Malshim is big enough to house millions of devils, and miles of tunnels have been dug out of the walls of the rift to make room for more. Unmappable, Malshim is so vast that only Asmodeus knows all of its secrets. Thank you for listening to this audiobook of Guide to Hell, 2nd edition, Chapter 4, The Nine Layers. I hope you enjoyed and have a great day. Best regards, Reed.